So welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Megan Blyth. I am project manager in the local and community empowerment team at the Centre for Sustainable Energy. It's a really long title. I will just say CSE for now. I'm here with my colleague Lucy. If Lucy just wants to give a quick wave to a blurry wave. And Lucy's going to be helping me out today, just monitoring the chat. And helping sort of field questions. So yeah, welcome to everyone on this, I think for me, an incredibly gloomy Tuesday evening. Today's webinar is all about communicating and engaging your communities. It is part of a series of webinars that we're doing for the Northwest Community Energy Pathways Programme. So for those who don't know what this programme is, it's a project that's funded by the Northwest Net Zero Hub, and it's delivered by ourselves at CSE and also CAG consultants, and it's to provide expertise and support to help the community energy sector in the Northwest. So we've been supporting the hub with the Community Energy Fund and also delivering webinars and doing other bits and pieces. So this is actually, we took a long break, but this is part of a longer series. So some of you might have attended our previous webinars that would have been delivered by my colleague Dan. I think the last one was potentially on sort of governance. So we're kicking this off again after the summer. We've got a webinar every month from now and between now and Christmas, all covering different topics. So I'll mention some of the other webinars at the end of this one. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. We'll be here until about 8:30, so hopefully it won't take too much of your evening. For those who don't know who CSE is, so we are a charity. We're based in Bristol, but we operate across the UK. We support people and organisations to tackle the climate emergency and end the suffering caused by cold homes. So we're a fairly large charity. We obviously, this is an ongoing issue of fuel poverty and the energy transition. So our charity keeps growing. We're about 140 staff now. We've been running for over 40 years, since 1979. We actually started from, if people know, the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales. That's where we began. We've got approximately 130 projects running at any given time across different teams in our organisation. So me and Lucy work in our communities team, focused on community energy and supporting community groups to take action on climate and energy. So today, the agenda is, I'm just going to do a bit of introduction to set the scene. I won't be talking for that long because we're going to hear from three really great speakers. We've got Richard Pearce from Lymm Community Energy, Pete West from Energy Local Bridport, and Paul Guymer from Dane Valley Community Energy to talk about their experiences of their projects and engaging their communities. And then we'll have all of those presentations one after the other, and we'll have a long Q&A session to sort of round up the event. And I'll end with some further resources and support, including our next webinars and how you can sign up for those. So yeah, so really excited to sort of get going. If you've got any questions whilst the presentations are happening, please just pop them in the chat. My colleague Lucy is going to be collating those questions as we go on, and then we'll be able to feed them back to the speakers or myself in the Q&A section. So just wanted to cover this a bit to provide a setting the scene. So I think probably a lot of you, being energy experts yourself, will be aware of the concept of the social gap. But I thought I would talk about this a bit to provide some context for why we're talking about this topic today and why it's so important. So the social gap is the gap between the high public support that we're seeing for developments such as renewables, but there being low success rates when it comes to planning applications. And so what we are seeing is, research showing that there is overall support for things like wind energy and solar farms, which in our perceived, we perceive that people tend to be against those types of developments, those large scale developments. However, support can disappear later down the line. People can face local opposition, and there can be issues when planning applications being submitted. It's important to sort of understand that people do have legitimate expectations, as we are all aware, that they can meaningfully influence how and what any developments happen in their local area, including renewable energy projects, and that they should benefit from hosting them. So objections happen when these expectations are not met. So it's really important that we have nuanced engagement processes if we are to roll out these projects at a large scale. And that's really why it's important that we engage with communities at all levels of our projects. So it's essential to get local buy-in. I say not just for your project, but for your organization as well. So you can't really have community energy without community. You might need to get buy-in to even just scope out an initial project or to apply for funding to develop it further, to have feasibility studies done. But you'll also probably need buy-in to recruit members and investors and directors for your organization. It's also important to minimize conflict and opposition later down the line, and also build long-term partnerships with key stakeholders. So your community is probably going to include key stakeholders like landowners and business owners, and maybe somebody who works for the local government or who works for a DNO who's going to need to sort of be on your side. So that's a big part of engagement as well. It's going to support your investment efforts too. So thinking about when you come to do crowdfunding or share raises, you'll need to engage your community then. And it's important to also think about the inclusivity of your participation too. So who's actually getting involved? Are they really representative of your community as a whole? Are you including as many diverse voices as you can? And I think the sort of really underlying principle for all of this is the community really needs to be engaged early on. So when you're even just scoping out what you want to do in the community, or even if you want to understand if community energy is appropriate for your area or if it's something that your area wants, and also at all stages of your project and organization, from development to installation and also post-installation. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to hand over straight to Richard Pearce from Lymm Community Energy, who's going to speak a bit about his experience with their solar work. So Richard, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
I'm from Lymm Community Energy. We're based in the northwest, not far from Warrington, so halfway between Manchester and Liverpool. You can see our logo up there. We're also part of a wider community group called Blyth, and I'll say a few words about that a bit later on. But first, just a bit of background about Lymm Community Energy. So we're a community benefit society, been going since 2015-16, when we raised money from local investors and installed solar systems on 4 primary schools in Lymm. You can see them there. 2 of the installations were on flat roofs and 2 on sloping roofs. We also helped 3 of the schools invest in low energy lighting at the same time. And the schools are really benefiting in a huge way now. We reckon between them they're saving about £14,000, £15,000 a year, which is obviously very welcome this time with cutbacks and everything. We got in at the time when the feed-in tariff was operating. So obviously that was very beneficial and made the financial plan much easier to attain. And we also charged the schools for the electricity, but it's a pretty low level. And our main task at the moment is keeping these up and running and operating effectively. Any surplus funds we make, like other BenComs, is put into a community benefit fund. We go on to the next slide, where we've set that at funding at 20% of the total distribution. That includes the community benefit fund and share interest payments. We've paid out, getting on for 9,000, a bit over £9,000 so far, covering environmental projects in the village. In the early days, we did mainly in energy efficiency improvements to community buildings, insulation, lighting, controls, things like that, destratification fan. But more recently, we've widened the criteria a bit. So we've helped a community woodland buy some management, grassland management equipment. And we've also helped a local organisation with climate emergency awareness raising. So the other project area we've been working on, the next slide, is a solar farm, 2.5 megawatt solar farm on green belt land. The feasibility study for that was funded by Rural Community Energy Fund grants, both stage 1 and stage 2, covering grid connection, community engagement, land lease, financial model, all the planning surveys, huge number of planning surveys required to do that. But the community engagement bit was obviously a crucial part, which we did early on, and we've kept in touch with the community throughout the project and at the planning application stage as well. Where we're at the moment is that we're still waiting for a response, a final determination from the planners. We're negotiating with them over some issues that have been raised, and I'll mention some of the issues with community engagement a bit later on. So moving on to the main part of the webinar today, in terms of how we've done our community engagement since the beginning, really, and we've learned a lot and changed our tack as we moved along. We've got a website. I guess most community organizations will have a website. We do use social media quite a lot, particularly Facebook. And we have produced regular newsletters and emailed them out to our membership list and also to other people in the community. The next one, quite a bit of PR and advertising. We've got a very good local magazine, Lymm Life, and we've advertised a bit in that, but we find if we put a small ad in, we also get a good hunk of PR as well, and we've built up a good relationship with them. So we can usually get an article in the magazine that goes out to every house in the village. We can usually get an article in at quite short notice and without any problem. We've also got a local radio station, and we've promoted ourselves and engaged with the community through that. I think one of the big changes recently is that we were one of the founder members, and we've helped form what we call LEAF, the Lymm Environmental Action Forum, which is like an umbrella group of quite a few organizations that are involved in environmental issues. We've got the community woodland people, we've got University of the Third Age, their environment group. There's a climate emergency group in the village, and people involved in keeping Lymm tidy, and Lymm in bloom and things like that, all involved in the environment. And by forming LEAF, we're able to share resources and to do things that we wouldn't be able to do on our own, because we're staffed completely by volunteers, and we don't have any paid staff, and time is limited, resources are limited. So that joining LEAF and getting LEAF off the ground and has been very, very beneficial. It's also helped us with fundraising as well. One of the things we've done quite a lot of is running energy information and advice sessions in the village. Sometimes through the some years we did it through the Big Energy Saving Network, but we've also run our own drop-in advice sessions, and we've got one actually coming up on the 22nd of October, and this brings quite a few people in from the community, and we can help them with energy efficiency and help them with their energy bills, help them with investing in PV, heat pumps, battery storage, things like that. And we do quite a lot of that through our members who've already installed this equipment and are able to talk about what their experiences are, what the pros and cons are, and things like that. So it's quite a practical approach. We've also run these sort of events online, and we've also joined other community organizations where they're running eco events, and we've taken a table there and use that to raise awareness of what we're doing. Next one, I think this is an important one that we found very useful. Doing a series of presentations, particularly to the parish council, We're involved with their environment committee, and we're regarded as a partner with the environment committee. So we go along to all their meetings and give an update about what we're doing. And members of the public are there, as well as the parish councillors. We do quite a lot with the schools, actually following on from the panels that we've installed. We've got online monitoring systems for all the panels on the school, so we're able to feed back what the performance is like and show them the benefits they've had from money saving, but also the information they can use for activities in the school. And that's just not to the school children only, or the teachers, but also to their parents. So that spreads the message around the community. We also link in a lot with churches in Lymm. There's a Churches Together Lymm and District organisation we work through, and we make sure we're known to a wide range of community groups in the village, like Roundtable and Rotary, and we've done presentations to a number of them, including groups like Probus and Soroptimist. We've also carried out energy audits of community buildings, like the village hall itself, the youth and community centre, the Scout and Guide headquarters, and we've used those to present information on how they can become more energy efficient, and that engages with all the users of those buildings. So again, that's a good way of spreading the message and engaging with the community. And then another area we've found useful is participating in village events. Some of the bigger village events like Lymm Festival, which is attended by many thousands of people, particularly on the opening day. The May Queen as well, where we've had stalls from time to time. And I think the issue we find here is that you've got to work quite hard at engaging with people because they're there to enjoy themselves, and we have to find a way of encouraging them to come onto our stand rather than just walk past and go to the ice cream van or the hamburger stall or whatever it might be. So we've got I usually stand out in the middle and grab them and pull them across to the table. The other thing that we've done a bit more recently is online surveys. We did a consultation survey, quite a big one, for the early days of the solar farm, which also asked questions about people's awareness of what we were doing, what Lymm Community Energy are doing. And we've done a recent online survey for Leaf, where we're trying to find out what people's priorities really are, and also what they'd like us to focus on in the future. And the energy efficiency and renewables comes up very high on the list. So moving on to some of the key challenges I'm sure some of you will already be facing. I think the big one from our point of view is the constraints on volunteer resources and time. We're a relatively small group. We've got 8 people as directors on the board. We can call on resources from other volunteers as well, but we don't have any paid staff. So it's very much a question of making the best use of the resources we've got and teaming up with others. And this is where the link with Leaf has been very important. We're able to share resources, and we're able to jointly bid for funding, which enabled us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do with our own team. I think the next two together really, it's about defining and understanding the community and tailoring the message to the right audience. We're a village of about 12,000 people, 13,000 people, fairly diverse in terms of age group, although we are sort of an aging population. So lots of different types of house types, family situations. And I think the key thing there is to what hooks are we going to use to motivate people in things like energy efficiency and renewables? Are people motivated by reducing their carbon emissions and tackling climate change, or Is it about reducing energy bills, getting the costs down, which is obviously very topical at the moment? Is it about improved comfort or health, or increasing the value of their homes, improving their EPC levels? But I think it's very much a question of trying to tailor the message to the audience. The next one also, I think, is a bit sort of similar, but what we found, particularly in the early days, is we'd run events and they'd always be the same people who turned up. So how do you get beyond the green enthusiasts who will come along to most things that we're running? And I think this is back to the message again, which needs to be very, I think, simple and positive and targeted, and also talking to people where they are rather than expecting them to come to us. Hence those sort of presentations I talked about earlier on, and being involved in village events. And also, I think people are much more inspired where you can show them real examples of what people have done in the community. So this is where we've got members who've put in solar panels on their homes, put in heat pumps, got batteries, got electric vehicles. And what we're encouraging people to do is visit them in their homes, talk to them about what went right, what went wrong, and that's a great way of getting the message across. Finally, on the very specific area of the solar farm, it's something harking back to what Megan was saying. What we found when we did our first round of consultations, when the project was at quite an early stage during the phase 1 of the Rural Community Energy Fund, we did a lot of community engagement. We did the online survey, and we got very positive responses. There were, it was sort of 80 or 90 people in favour, 8%, I mean, in favour, and not a lot of objectors. When we came to put planning permission in, it all rather changed, and the objectors, the people living around where they were planning the solar farm to go, were very vociferous in their objections. We did go and visit most of them and talk to them about it to try and look at how we could mitigate some of the objections they were putting forward. But I'm not sure that's made a huge amount of difference. What we found was it's quite difficult to encourage people who were in favour to respond to the public consultations at that stage. I mean, we managed to get some responses, but it was quite hard work. So the objectors are always tend to make the biggest noise. The people who are in favour, the silent majority, tend to keep quiet. So you've got to work hard at trying to encourage them to support your project. Okay, so that's me. Questions and answers later on.
That was really great. It's good to see such a breadth of communication methods that you're using there, sort of surveys and presentations and talking to people. I'm sure we can sort of touch on the discussion, some of the experiences that people have with opposition and naysayers, and whether anyone's got any tips on that. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to go over to Pete from Energy Local Bridport. Pete, are you still there?
Yeah, hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks to CSE for inviting me to give a presentation. I've been involved in community energy since about 2013, and I'm very passionate about it. I always like to discuss and see what's going elsewhere. And what's totally fascinating about listening to Richard is that our experience is very, very, very similar, and our active community engagement has been very, very similar as well. So yeah, my background, actually, I was employed for 8 years by Dorset County Council as Renewable Energy Development Officer. And in 2013, they seconded me 1 day a week to set up Energy Local Bridport as a separate not-for-profit community it's a community benefit society, again, the same as Lymm, to install solar PV on schools. And it was a pretty good investment. It didn't cost the county council anything, actually, because they had funding from the National Lottery for some sustainability project. But the cost saving to date for the schools and the various sites where we've installed 28 solar PV installations is about £300,000. So 1 day a week for a couple of years. And that's the return in lower energy bills for these public buildings. We've only installed on public buildings, 28 sites, and we've raised over £1 million of community investment. And what's quite unusual, so this is Dorset Community Energy, because I was obviously one of the founder directors, but I also want to discuss a different project a bit later on, Energy Local Bridport. So Dorset Community Energy installed solar PV on schools, 3 hospitals, 4 community buildings. And what's slightly interesting, we didn't advertise our share of it. Next slide then, I think. Yeah, the share offers, how money is actually raised as a community benefit society. You're allowed to raise money through shares. 1 person, 1 vote, quite democratic. But the share offers, we only promote it locally, not nationally. So 75% of our investors who put this money in for schools and hospitals in Dorset actually live in Dorset, which again is quite nice. When we have an AGM, we got to know the actual people who are members, and we've got 250 members now. Okay, next one. Also, the same as Richard, we have been doing quite a lot of community activities particularly with children, which again gets the parents a bit interested or pleased, and partly things that not necessarily talking too much about climate, but trying to put forward like fun, positive activities, like making little models that work with solar panels and the children to make these little propellers and cups spin round and or plates spin round and round. And the bottom picture is the town crier in Dorchester who came along to have a look. The next one. And this is the other thing that Richard mentioned as well about the schools with PV. We can install monitoring, and we've experimented a lot with having a screen in the school so that as people walk in the morning in the reception area, they can actually see the solar generation within the school. And this is a primary school in Bridport. It's in July 2017. And what you notice here is the top slide, the top part of the slide in green shows the solar generation on this particular day. The red is the background electricity use by the school. Like you see, it's much lower at night. It picks up obviously during the daytime, so it's ideal for PV. And the yellow in the bottom part of the slide is the solar which is exported, not used by the school. So it's nice for the pupils. They can actually be at school using their computers and electronic equipment and everything else, and they can actually see that the school is carbon neutral from the solar. So it's a really positive message that a transformation is possible and it's affordable. Yeah, next one. So what happened, it was probably fairly similar to Richard again. The government stopped the feed-in tariff in 2019. Without a source of regular income, like the feed-in tariff, it's very difficult to raise money and offer to pay people interest and their capital returned actually as well. Other than selling power at a very expensive price, which defeats the object. So we knew a farmer who owned a 50 kilowatt wind turbine near Bridport. And he said he would like to supply local households with electricity from this wind turbine. There was an example in Bethesda, North Wales, an organisation called Energy Local, who was supplying households with electricity from a hydro. So we met up with Energy Local from Bethesda in North Wales and said, could you do a similar project with us in Bridport? And they said, yeah, fine. We had a £10,000 grant, which mainly covered training for Energy Local and giving us technical advice and setting up a contract so we could legally sell electricity at the local level to householders. So next one. Our community engagement was relatively low key. It was freezing cold weather in January 2020, and we had 2 street stalls and a public meeting in the town hall, and we had 70 expressions of interest to join this energy sharing, you might call it, local energy supply. And we only needed 50 householders because the wind turbine is relatively small, and that would be, we were advised that's the optimum number of households. So everyone benefited, but there was enough to go around to make a realistic benefit. So we went ahead. The 50 kilowatt wind turbine, it's been supplying households in Bridport since 2021. And without any further advertising at all, we've got another 90 householders on the waiting list. The national organisation, Energy Local, has got quite a nice website where anyone interested in, there's about 10 Energy Local clubs in the UK, anyone interested can sign the details, and I can, as an advisor, I can access their details and contact with people who would like to join Energy Local Bridport. Actually, Bridport, again, the similarity with Richard, it's about 13,000 people. And this is very innovative. This is the first example in England, actually, of local electricity supply from an external generator using the grid. And the households have to have smart meters. They have to be in the same substation area as the generator. And the wind turbine is just on the very north edge of this blue line. And everybody within that distance is connected to the same substation. So it's physical transfer of electricity. It's almost in real time. Every half hour, the export from the wind turbine is measured. The consumption is measured for each householder, and the generation is distributed to the householders. And the next one, I think. Yeah, the bottom line there, the current price, sorry, the average price that people are paying now is 16.9p, and the wind is being supplied at 15p. And the way that the wind energy supply price is agreed, it's between the members and the generator have what we call like an open book negotiation, really. The generator was getting 5 pence. He's probably getting 6p now for what he puts into the grid, which is not supplied to local people. That power is usually sold at 24p at the moment. And we said, look, why not? Let's split the difference. And at the moment, the difference means that he gets 15p and householders pay 15p. This whole sort of system, it's called a complex site, is set up with advice from the National Energy Local, but we need an electricity supply company as a partner to do the metering, the billing. And of course, the customers then have to switch to that electricity supply company. And the agreement we've got is with Octopus Energy. And what I do like about it is that households can leave at any time without penalty. So we wouldn't commit people to joining something where they couldn't leave easily or where there was any cost at all. So basically, this is very low risk from households. They don't need any capital investment at all, and their payment to join Energy Local is £5 a year. And the average savings are about 20% of electricity bills. And it's also a bit complicated to explain, but it's not only local wind, it's a time of use tariff as well. So at night time, the household can buy cheap electricity, which helps balance the grid. Okay, so this was very popular. There had a lot of national publicity. It was in the Times in January 2022. Next one, Megan. We had a lot of publicity. It's featured in ITV Meridian News with the weather forecaster here was interviewing Peter. So yeah, a lot of publicity. As anything with community energy, it's never black and white and straightforward. We've done very well for 3 years, but Octopus Energy are continuing to support Energy Local Bridport and the 9 other Energy Local clubs for the current financial year, but they will not support any new clubs. And so without an electricity supply company willing to do this metering and the billing, and basically they get new customers and they get the selling power when there's not enough local renewable generation. It's impossible, almost impossible to get an electricity supply company in England to do this. In Europe, it's legislation now. All electricity supply companies have to provide local metering and billing for community groups. Every European country, except now we're out of Europe, we don't benefit from that legislation, although it's on the cards. Now, the next issue is it's a little bit about this thing about social gap and about people wanting to benefit from local renewables. And what Octopus are doing is they've set up their own scheme where they build or purchase wind turbines and supply householders within the same area with half-price wind electricity when the wind is blowing at certain speeds. If you want to look at the web link there, it's Octopus Energy Generation Fan Club. This is on their current website, and they say they've got 20,000 householders now that expressed interest. And I think there's some connection with government policy where the government are now allowing onshore wind, but in practice, Octopus have only got 3 turbines, each one about 500 kilowatts, already operating, which they've used to pilot their fan club model, which is very similar to Energy Local model, but of course these are owned by Octopus, which they find a lot easier. And I think I have the next one. Okay. Okay, so Octopus are doing that. Octopus are also going into offshore wind and supplying households at low price electricity from offshore wind. So it's quite a transformation in the market. And it could be regarded as sort of corporate capture, but it's how people think about that. So same as Richard again. We Energy Local Bridport decided that we would work with Dorset Community Energy to install ground-mounted solar to supply these householders on our waiting list. So we talked to a local landowner who owns 1,000 acres of land near Bridport, and we said, would you be interested in leasing 1 acre of land for solar panels, which would supply 200 householders in Bridport? And he signed a land lease agreement. And we went exactly the same as Richard, actually. We got a Rural Community Energy Fund Stage 1 and Stage 2 grant, and we went ahead and we got planning permission by a 7-2 majority. Yep, next one, Megan. I'll try and finish it now. The site, I really like it because the picture on the left is a road beside the site, and it's actually a sunken road. So anybody driving along doesn't even see the solar panels. Also, there's a transformer in the same field, and actually, during the RCF study, the local electricity company have actually they've converted the transformer, given us a grid connection, and got it all ready to get started. And although, what's really interesting, it's within the Dorset area of outstanding natural beauty, but it's actually fairly flat rural farmland. If we have a look at the next one, Megan. The other issue is planning, which Richard's obviously working with now, is the County Council Planning Committee wanted us to, or have required us to plant woodland round the 2 sides of the field that are visible. The other side, I said, is a sunken road. And what's interesting, it's not just a hedge, it's a 10 or 12 meter wide strip of woodland. So maybe could you go back 2 slides? Yeah. Now then. So fine, you got planning permission, you got land lease agreement, and we could supply 200 householders, and the economics stack up brilliantly. The participating householders would save £600,000 in electricity bills over a period of 20 years. One household, which is behind the big tree in the left-hand corner, happened to be the nearest household to the site. They started a local campaign against the proposal, and the nephew of the landowner happened to live 400 meters on the other side of this field. And basically between the 2 of them, they persuaded, well, and they had a local campaign against it, but they persuaded the landowner not to go ahead with the lease. So at the moment we're stuck, and also we're stuck because the economics are completely dependent on selling power at about 9 or 10 pence. We wouldn't make it viable if we sold into the grid at 6p is what we'd get otherwise if it wasn't supplied locally. So we're sort of a bit in limbo, but we haven't given up. I think that's it for the moment.
Thanks, Pete. Good to know you haven't given up. Nice to end it on a positive note. Great, thank you. I'm going to hand straight over to Paul now for the Congleton projects, and then we'll go to questions after that.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Guymer from
Your sound
Dane
is
Valley
very
Community
bad,
Energy.
Paul. Wait, just try again. It seems like it stopped crackling now.
Okay, yeah, I'm Paul Guymer from Dane Valley Community Energy. Does that sound better?
It's still very, very crackly. It didn't seem to have this issue when we tested it before.
No, it didn't.
No, try to maybe mute yourself and unmute. That will work. Sometimes these things just end up working okay after a while. Try now.
Can you hear me now?
It's still quite bad.
At all?
I wonder if
Is it?
yeah, I wonder.
I don't usually have this problem.
Well, would it be okay?
I wonder if I stop the video. I wonder if I stop the video, my video.
It still
Is
seems
that
to be
is that
quite
any better?
crackly. No, sorry everyone. Maybe Paul, if you leave and then come back in, maybe we just start by taking a couple questions in the chat and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Can
Oh
do
no, wait,
that.
that
Yeah.
works now. That works now. It seems to work.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Right. So for the third time, yeah. I'm from Dane Valley Community Energy, based in Congleton, Cheshire. And I must confess, I think a lot of the things I'm going to say probably are going to reiterate what Pete and Richard have said, or perhaps with a slightly different slant. Again, we're a community benefit society. So our objective is basically to generate renewable energy, reduce carbon emissions, and produce a community fund that we use for various funding local community groups. So in addition to generating renewable energy, carbon-free electricity, we have a community benefit fund, which we use to fund various things. The hydro we do two things basically. We have a hydro and we're currently developing a solar scheme. The hydro over the past years has had about 300 visitors, including Cubs, various schools, sixth form colleges, and then also stakeholder management teams, because we're quite closely linked with Siemens, who actually buy the electricity from the hydro scheme, and they tend to use it for to bring their both national and international management teams to view. They kind of see it, I guess, as an example of how their local how their factories can benefit from renewable energy. So they like to bring them around and tour the site. The surplus funds, which to date have amounted from the hydro, which to date have amounted to about £9,000 over 2 years, I guess. We donate to local groups. So, for example, you can see there's a local rickshaw, a group which offers rickshaw rides to care home residents. We're involved in air quality monitoring. We've provided funding for scouts and various things that local schools use. We haven't received any complaints as yet. Plenty of accolades, but no complaints. Next slide, please. We're also about promoting interest in investment in more renewable energy schemes, including solar and hydro, which I'll talk about as we go along. Next slide, please. The team of people consists of about 30 volunteers altogether. So we've got about 8 or 9 directors in total. So some kind of, which you'll see generally from an engineering background, and then or engineering, I guess, or finance management background, and then we have other volunteers which actually look after the maintenance of the hydro itself. So we have to regularly detrash the intake. So we have a group of about 4 or 5 people that take it in turns to go down there and rake out all the rubbish. In the winter, it's probably 3 times a week. We're also regular maintenance to be done on the hydro, which we do ourselves. We also have an education team that we kind of develop presentations for local groups and schools, and we're also developing competitions for school children to participate in. The site itself requires maintenance. I suppose it's about an acre and a half woodland site of special scientific interest. So we're involved as part of the planning condition. We had to implement a woodland management plan, and so we've got a team of people that look after rewilding of the site. And then, in order to distribute the funds, the surplus funds that I've been talking about, we have a community trust, which is about 4 or 5 people that decide where all the money's going to go. Next slide, please. This just shows our partners, some of the suppliers, some of the construction people. We've also got the Eaton Bank School there that we got heavily involved with in kind of developing some of the education programs for the school. The town council, Congleton Partnership. I'd probably have Cheshire East Council on there if they were a bit more cooperative, but at the moment they're not being. Next slide, please. So as I said, the inaugural project, which we developed, we started kind of developing it in about 2015, and then started construction probably in 2020. It's an Archimedes screw, takes water from the river on the upside of a weir, puts it straight back in. And it's quite a historic weir, actually. It's about 4 meter high, which is pretty high for industrial revolution era weirs, built in 1762. And next slide, please. So it's the photograph there on the left of the hydro that we've built. 2.5 meters diameter, 8 meters long, weighs about 15 tons in total, including the screw and the trough. And it takes water from the river at a rate at design, when there is enough water in the river, at about 150 tons a minute. Actually generates 65 kilowatts of peak power, 250 megawatts hours of electricity. And then we sell the electricity, and this is the key to making this thing financially viable. We sell it at commercial rates to a local manufacturer, namely Siemens, on a site about 1 kilometer away. So we actually we installed a kilometer export cable to export, and all of the electricity we generate is taken by Siemens. So including we were kind of at the end of the fits for hydro. I think we probably get about 8p kilowatt hour, but overall we generate about £70,000 a year, which we use to pay back our shareholders over 25 years with a bit of interest, and obviously fund the community funds. Next slide, please. We kind of did it, and we 4 of us started up back in 2015 with a grant from the RCF. And we got all the consents and a costed design for raising finance in January 2020. And then, of course, around that time, COVID hit, and we thought, well, how the heck are we going to raise all this money now, because we can't go and talk to people? But I think it was actually a godsend, because we immediately started with Zoom meetings, which allowed us to kind of broadcast our offer nationwide. And in the end, we ended up getting financing from the local community, but also from, you know, Land's End to John O'Groats, really. We probably we raised about 700,000 from 320 investors, and then a further investment from UK Cooperative, a booster fund. Some photos on the right. Construction was particularly difficult. It was a very bad site to build on in one of the wettest winters in the last 10 years. So it was quite a challenge, but we did do it, and we've been up and running successfully since 2021. Next slide, please. What we've got next, we formed a new. We wanted to do more work, more development, but we didn't want to jeopardize the investment that had been made by the shareholders of DVCE. So we formed another CBS, separate CBS, and we have raised. What we're trying to do is develop rooftop solar to be installed on schools and local businesses, and more hydro generation. And we've got 3 other weirs that we're kind of working on. We got a £100,000 grant from the RCF for consent, which was basically, strangely enough, it was that we went straight into stage 2. We didn't bother with stage 1. We'd already done some work ourselves on the feasibility study for the hydro at Congleton Park, so we applied straight for a stage 2 grant, which covered both the hydro development, the new hydro development, and the roof-based solar. And we have since obtained a further 40k grant for evaluating more cost-effective hydro technologies than the Archimedes screw. So we're trying to look at vortex turbines, siphon turbines, simply because without the feed-in tariff, it's very difficult to make hydro cost-effective. So we're kind of into a development phase now. The solar project, we raised 316,000, and then got various loans and grants, again a booster fund, and we've got the first installation of 9 in August, and the remaining installations are imminent. Next slide, please. The hydro project, I guess Pete and also Community Energy Group, we've had issues with planning for the hydro and with land ownership issues. Unfortunately, the local council owns the land, and for some reason I've got hang-ups about leasing it to us without having some kind of offering to allow other groups to bid on the land lease. So anyway, hopefully we have applied for planning, and hopefully we'll get that at the end of October, and then we'll see if we can sort out the land ownership and the leasing issues once we've got the planning. So in terms of local in terms of community engagement, I guess there's kind of the local, there's really kind of two communities to worry about. There's the local, and then there's the wider community. So in terms of planning, I agree with both the previous speakers. It's really important to gain the support and confidence and approval of the stakeholders and the local community and your future neighbours, so that when you actually do apply for planning permission, they're not coming after you to object and stop the project before it gets off the ground. So again, we're kind of losing the local newsprint, the radio interviews, market stalls, social media, and then, yes, one-on-one meetings with future stakeholders and neighbours where you think you're going to have problems. It does seem, I think, if you can get one-on-one, it does seem to make a real difference. In terms of kind of, you can tend to be able to get people on your side if you're kind of talking to them one-on-one. And then of course we set up a portal for any comments and questions and try to respond to just to get a feel for what the support and objections we're going to have, and try and give as much feedback as we can. And then in terms of, so that's kind of all, that's pretty much local. And then in terms of capital fundraising, we found we needed to get the share off. We needed to raise a lot of money, so we realized we weren't going to get it from the local neighborhood. So we went nationwide and utilizing various national databases that are offered by UK Co-op, Share Energy. And we did a lot of the selling to prospective investors through holding webinars. Next slide, please. And then during construction, you've got to bear in mind that between you actually getting all the share capital in and your investors getting any return is quite a long period. Because generally there's probably more design work to do, more, and then there's the actual, particularly for hydro, there's more there's a 6-month period for construction. And then in our case, we delayed any kind of payback to investors for a further year after we started generating funds. And so to keep the investors happy, we had a monthly newsletter kind of going out just to explain that, you know, this thing was real, and they were going to get some payback. And again, certainly during construction, and it probably doesn't apply as much for solar, but certainly for the hydro, if you're doing a lot of piling in close to neighborhoods, then you've really got to keep the neighbors on board. And other issues with traffic and lots and lots of things. So really kind of keep the neighbors up to date on what's going on. If there's anything particularly bad going to happen, it's best if they know about it beforehand. And then where there are problems, we went to talk to them and kind of explain what was happening and beg forgiveness, basically. And then I think in terms of site maintenance, as you can see, we've got quite a large group of volunteers involved in all the various aspects, which I probably covered before. So next slide, please. Education. Yeah, we do general public and school visits. We have an online booking scheme. We tend to try and do visits probably once a month. Like at Dorset Community Energy, we like the idea of these real-time visual displays of the hydro and solar scheme performance, and we've got those and are planning to have those in schools, but also in the head office head office of Siemens in Manchester, and in the local factory, I think, as well. And I think I've talked about the various school science competitions. We've actually developed a kit that which basically is a 3D printed Archimedes screw and a source of water from a pressurized bottle. And we supply it to schools and organize competitions. You can tweak the system in various ways to try and maximize the amount of energy you can get out of it. So it's a way of the kids kind of learning about what really makes these systems most efficient. And then obviously we get a lot of community engagement through the distribution of the grants. Next slide, please. Or is that last? That's probably the last one, isn't it?
Last one, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, that's oh, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And that's what I got to say.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. I'll stop sharing now and go to questions. I think because we're running a bit over time, I think I'll go straight, Lucy, I'll go straight to the questions posed in the chat, if that's okay, and prioritize those. For any questions we don't get to, including the pre-submitted questions, we will send some responses following today's webinar. So Lucy, if it's okay to hand over to you, have you got any questions you want to field?
Yeah, there's just a few. So I think there's a few that were aimed at Richard initially. So the first one, did you produce pro forma letters for supporters to submit to planning, or did you consider that might be detrimental as it could be perceived as inauthentic?
That question to Richard.
Yeah, he's on mute, I think.
Oh yeah, Richard, I think you're on mute there. I don't know if you can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you're through now.
No, we decided against that. I think in talking to planners, and we have a member of our board is on the local planning committee as well. That these pro forma things, they don't carry an awful lot of weight if it's just obvious that it's a letter written by somebody and everyone else copies it. So we encouraged the people that we know are supporters to write things in their own words, and I think that's a lot more powerful.
Okay.
Was there another part to that question, or?
I don't know if that was from Richard Lane. Richard, do you want to say any more on that? If you're still there.
No, that covers it off.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Next one was from Paul Guymer. What are the main reasons for objecting to the solar farm?
Okay, it was people who lived in and around the solar farm, although they're quite a few hundred meters from the actual farm and it's pretty well hidden. They would be able to see the farm from their bedroom windows. And in one case, a guy with a 3-story house would be able to see the solar farm from his upper floor as well. And they didn't want to wake up in the morning and see a solar farm rather than a green field. That was one objection. I think the most substantial one, though, is being opposed to building on the green belt. And that's the sort of classic. And obviously you have to demonstrate very special circumstances. You have to show that the harm to the green belt, the agricultural land, is outweighed by the benefits. So we're working hard on demonstrating what the real community benefits could be from a community energy organization doing this rather than a commercial developer. With the surpluses going back to the community and things like that. The thing that's changed just recently is the national consultation on the national planning framework, which is more conducive towards community energy and to meeting the net zero carbon targets as well. So we are appealing to planners to take that into account. And we're also working closely with the high school, where we're looking at a virtual power purchase agreement with them to sell them the electricity, so we can demonstrate I mean, that would be a huge benefit to the community. So yeah, and it seems to me, this business about very special circumstances, and the planners admitted this, it's very, very subjective. They've complained on the grounds, or they've objected on the grounds that it affects the openness of the countryside. But how do you measure that? How do you judge that? So I think it's one where it would be good to sort of pool information and experience of people who've been through something similar. But those are the two main objections, with the green belt one being the really substantive one.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I can see that Anne's got her hand up. And did you have something to come in on that topic there? Or is it a different question?
Well, it's about getting planning permission for things.
Okay.
Can I make comment?
Yeah, sure.
I used to be a city councillor on Lancaster City Council, and so this was before 2011, so quite a while ago now. But the local university, Lancaster University, was trying to get planning permission for a wind turbine, and they brought in this organisation called Yes to Wind. And they had a little stall in Lancaster City Centre, and with a little laptop, and they'd get people to write letters to their councillors in support of the wind turbine, like on the spot. Like, none of this sending people away to do it. They got them to do it there and then, and they'd write a little something, and perhaps they'd have a template letter, I can't remember. But I think that was really important. This getting people who are in support of it to write in is really critical, because that's the whole problem. You get one or two people that are against, and then councillors get very nervous and will refuse things if they can.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne. That's really great to hear. Well, I think just conscious of time, I think we can probably go to about 8:20 with some questions, and whatever other questions we will answer following today's session. So Lucy, if you want to take it away then.
Okay, just a few more. So Nicholas asked Richard again, how did you measure the degree of reach of your engagement campaign?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. We've tried to do that just recently with this survey that we've done, online survey that we've done. I mean, it sort of involves the Leaf group as a whole, but we've had quite about 100 plus responses from the community. So it's obviously it is a small part of the community, but we ask questions about awareness of our organisation, awareness of what we do, and the sort of what their priorities are, and that type of thing. So we've got some measure of feedback, if you like, about how well known we are in the community, which is but then with something like that, obviously you have to say, well, the people who responded, are they the ones who are going to be supporters anyway? People who are aware, rather than the rest of the village. And also whenever we do any sort of or events, or and we send out leaflets, and we do advertising and all that sort of thing, social media, we do ask people where they heard, how they heard about us, whether it was through one of these mechanisms or just word of mouth. Yeah, I think it's without us spending quite a bit of time and effort in doing a much more extensive survey, I think it is quite difficult to measure.
Okay. Right. Next question is for Paul Guymer. So how do you make the social media campaign local?
Okay. Well, we have a chance back local site which you know, basically only people in the local area will access. So obviously that is local. It is difficult though, and I don't think, to be honest, we've worried about it too much. You know, in terms of fundraising, we just decided that if we would just try and get money from whoever would give it to us, and didn't worry about trying to kind of particularly focus on the local community. I mean, we do quite a lot of local, not media activities, but I mean in terms of standing at green fairs with a stand, kind of explaining to people what we're doing, leaflet drops, writing articles for the newspapers, those kinds of things. But in the end, I would say more than 50% of the capital that we've raised has come from all over the country, not the local area. So.
There's one more question in the chat, which is another one for Paul. Do you have an example of your lease agreement with schools which you could share?
Yeah, probably. We're in the process of yeah, I think the answer is yes. We have had some difficulties coming to an agreement with schools, and that's why the first site that we've actually installed on was actually a golf club. They were far more relaxed about the whole thing, but there are just so many stakeholders within the local authority that get involved in the lease agreement that it can be difficult. But you know, we'll get there. There's a group in Manchester who installed solar panels on multiple schools quite successfully. So it's just a question of, you know, working through it, I think. But yeah, I can probably give you yeah, I can probably get a copy to you.
Great.
If you can pass on details, that'd be great.
Yeah, Phil, that was Phil's question. He's just asked another one. Please, can you share your contact? Was that for the...
I think what we'll do is with the speaker's consent, we'll share contact details following today, if that's okay. So
yeah.
Is that okay if we share your contact details off with the notes, and then Phil can get in touch about
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, I'm going to just share a few more slides just to wrap things up. But thank you to the speakers. That was really fantastic to hear about the breadth of engagement work that you're doing. So thank you. We will send around all the slides so people can go back to that, and yeah, the contact details as well, so you can get in touch if you need to. So yeah, I just wanted to wrap things up with some further resources to be aware of. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is a few ones that I have used with engagement support for community energy groups. So some of you may know about Bridport's Climate Toolkit, which was created by Climate Outreach. This is some communication toolkit to support with reaching different audiences in your community, and it provides a method of segmenting your audiences as well. There's also our own top tips for community engagement resource, which is a very simple general best practice tips for your communications. I highlighted the common concerns about wind, especially if there are groups thinking about wind now as we sort of released the embargo on that. And this is just sort of facts for communities to understand local policies for wind and address some common concerns that the community might have. The Energy Citizen Empowerment Kit is a really good gamified facilitation tool to support the planning and implementation of more diverse and inclusive community energy initiatives, so helping to reach maybe audiences that you hadn't usually reached before. My community has a bunch of really great tools and resources, and the Community Wellbeing Index as well is a tool to use to find out what matters most in your community. You can pop your postcode in, and there's some research there that's already been done to see what that shows in your local area. I think if you've got any questions about running events or accessing resources, or just need to talk to somebody, we have our communities team has an inbox you can email at any point, and we can signpost you to where you can get some support on this topic. So the email address is down there, and we'll also put it in the email following today's session. I wanted to highlight future energy landscapes. Some of you might have heard of this before. This was so this is an open source toolkit to deliver bottom-up approach to community engagement and planning for renewables. Everything is accessible on our website. This was created years ago with some funding from CPRE, so the Campaign to Protect Rural England. And we've recently revamped it as well and produced other guidance for any group to be able to use it. It's essentially a facilitation method to help with this issue of this social gap issue. So it's to support the planning and scoping of local renewable energy projects that will be appropriate for a local area, and how local communities feel about their landscape and how they value it. It starts to build this sort of social consent for developing different types of renewable projects in the area. And the outputs can be used in multiple ways, such as guiding local planning authorities to craft ambitious policies to assist community energy groups on their journey to deliver projects as well. I would say it's really good for early stage thinking. So sort of before you've even thought of a project, it's great to do this exercise to understand what your community might be okay with and want in the local landscape. I also wanted to highlight a new initiative called the Energy Learning Network, which is a national lottery funding initiative. It is delivered by a partnership that's led by Ashton and includes us in it, as well as Community Energy England, Wales, Scotland, and Action Renewables in Northern Ireland. It's a 4-year project where we will run a number of events, develop tools and resources, and support peer-to-peer learning to help community groups to deliver energy projects and maximise their scale and impact. So it's very new. I've popped a link there to understand a bit more about CSE's role in it. But just to sort of highlight a few opportunities that are coming up that might be relevant for you, we've got an opportunity for town, parish and community councils to apply to attend a series of workshops that will help them to create an enabling environment for community energy in their areas. So if you know a parish council or a town council and you want them to get some support on this, or you are involved in a council yourself, the expression of interest for that closes next Tuesday. We're also offering an opportunity to help community energy groups to become more inclusive and include more diverse voices in their projects and organisations. So that is, we're closing expression of interest for that on the 13th of October, so a bit longer for that. There are the sort of links on how to apply for that you can access by emailing us. So you can email us at elncommunity@csc.org.uk. We're also going to be delivering a series of webinars for any community organisations that maybe haven't done anything on energy, that want to learn more about what they can do on community energy. So we'll post more information about that on our channels and our webpage when we have more information. The next webinar is about, we've spoken a lot about planning today, so we'll be able to expand on this a bit more. My colleague Dan and Neil, who are resident planners at CSC, will be delivering a webinar on the 8th of October, same time, to talk about the recent changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. We'll highlight features which community energy groups should be aware of, and hear from speakers as well about their experiences in navigating the planning system. And we'll also showcase some tools and resources to help you navigate the planning process as well. The invitation is out there already. We'll send around a link for that with the follow-up from this webinar. So hopefully some of you might be able to attend that. In terms of future webinars, we've got a community energy and retrofit one in November, and also one more broadly on developing business models and financing for community energy on the 26th of November. And we'll be doing one on transport as well on the 10th of December. So these are our sort of upcoming webinars. Hopefully some of these might be of interest to you. Please do get in touch with us if you kind of want to know a bit more information, and we will sort of share the links as we develop those further. So I think that's it from me. I have got a quick little feedback survey just for us to complete before you go. If you've got any questions about today's webinar, you can email me or our community's email. And yeah, we'll put all the relevant contacts in our follow-up notes. But I hope you found today's session helpful. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen now and share a very, very quick Mentimeter, which some of you might have used already when you joined with the map. So I think if Lucy, if you could just pop the Mentimeter code. For some reason, it's not showing up on the screen there. Sorry, I will just grab that quickly. Apologies, I will get that. It's on another window. Usually it shows it on the screen, so I'm not sure what's gone on with that. I will just grab that. So if you go on menti.com on any sort of browser window, I'll pop the details there and use the code 55216248. And we've got a couple questions there. So I'll share my screen again. So the code to get into the Mentimeter is just in the chat. If you could all open up the chat, that would be great. And then you can respond to the question. I can see you've got Richard Lane, you've asked a question about the widening participation. So there isn't funding for attending those workshops. There is funding if we bring in speakers to help support those workshops. So other community energy groups that have sort of done a lot on this topic, we have got funding for that. But unfortunately, we don't have funding for all the groups attending those workshops. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Great. Hopefully you're all getting onto the Menti okay. Yeah, so it is, to answer your question, Richard, it definitely is a collaboration opportunity, because sort of the topic of inclusivity and community energy is quite new. So we do intend to sort of learn from those workshops. But yeah, and it's not a training program. But yeah, we just don't have the funding to pay for everyone involved. I can see lots of people have joined the Mentimeter, but I can't see many. Hopefully that means that everyone's voted yes, which is great. So we're going to go to the next question. What have been your key takeaways from today's webinar? Oh, I can see people have already answered, so that's really great. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that. This is really helpful. We will have a longer feedback survey that will follow today's session to expand on that. But this is really great for us to get a quick snapshot on what have been your key takeaways from today. Amazing. I just want to say that, yeah, thank you again to all the speakers, and thank you all for taking your evening to be with us today, and hopefully see some of you for the planning webinar on the 8th of October. Yeah, I've got a couple more minutes before today's webinar ends. If anybody's got any other questions for us, otherwise we will end here.
I've got a comment, Megan. Yeah. I just found it genuinely really moving, I would almost say. The general sort of approach from Richard and Paul it just makes me feel quite positive that the community energy sector is quite different from a corporate organisation which is installing large-scale solar or even Octopus. You just got so many different dimensions to the community sector, with engaging the whole community, working with schools, giving independent, objective advice to householders. It just seems so much more positive than other alternatives that's out there. Just a comment, really.
Yeah, that's very true. And hopefully that's something that we can present to our communities as well to get them on board. Fantastic. All right, well, thanks everyone. I'll stop sharing here. Have a good evening and we will follow up very soon. All right, thank you. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.